Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. If you're on Facebook or Twitter or YouTube or Twitch, thanks for joining and tuning in today. This is Seeking Sustainability Live number 68. We have a great guest today who has done a very variety of jobs and variety of career, from law to jet to starting your own business. So we got so much interesting stuff to talk about. Thanks so much for joining, Sabrina.
Yes, good morning, everybody, and thank you, Joy, for having me. This is your series has really been interesting, and you bring on really cool people, so I'm glad to be invited.
Oh, thank you so much. Would you mind just in the beginning, just start introducing yourself?
Sure, sure. So yeah, as you mentioned, I have a kind of a range of experiences. So I came to Japan as a jet, and so I've just finished my third year on the jet program. And I came in initially to take a little bit of a break from practicing law, but I found also that I have a little bit of entrepreneurial experience, and I grew up in a very entrepreneurial family. So I'm always kind of working on side projects. So right now, TokyoGround is that current project.
Interesting. Right now, I'm showing your LinkedIn profile, Sabrina H, and the profile from, I think, Few Japan. So you've been on the board, one of the board members, managing
Yeah,
directors. Can you introduce that?
yeah. So at FEW, I'm a program director, and the next big thing I'm working on with FEW is we have an event called CSS, which is the Career Strategy Seminar. So we will be curating I think between 12 and 14 really fabulous women to give a seminar on their particular area of expertise. It's geared to women that are either entrepreneurs or career women, or even mothers are welcome. So that's what I'm doing at FEW. I came on a little bit after FEW sent me to do the JMEC program. So I think uh, there's an article I wrote for FEW about that experience because it was really fabulous. And that's how I got to FEW. That's how I learned about FEW. And I loved what they're doing. So I wanted to jump in.
Yeah, we'll talk about the JMEC experience a bit later. But that's great that you could get that experience and pass on some of your business sense as well. I think you've got that entrepreneurial background as well as your experience in America in law, as well as in Japan teaching and then running your own business. So I think that variety of background is really useful for other women in Japan or anywhere actually. Let's start with a bit more about your background before you came to Japan. You had some interesting experiences. One of them is a human rights facilitator. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So, well, at the you mean at the WHO, or when I came here in Japan, actually, I taught a course through Human Rights Now.
Oh,
So
yeah, that's the one I'm showing right now.
yeah, so that is an NGO that's has special reporter status to the UN, and they cover a variety of issues. And I worked with one other former jet, and we taught a class. It was an English language book club geared for women to get them to talk about some of the human rights issues happening abroad, but then also use that as a point to reflect back onto what's going on in Japan. So it was a really cool experience because it's difficult to kind of see or really talk about what's going on in Japan so directly. But when we would talk about trafficking and the consequences of it abroad, then we would take a pause and be like, oh, what happens in other parts of Tokyo. So it was really really insightful. And we had one woman who was a professional, like she had a career and she had a child. And Um, just to hear her kind of talk about the societal pressure that she couldn't really win either as a professional or as a mother. It was really like I felt like she didn't have anywhere else to really talk about this kind of experience. So in that way, like the discussion part of that group was excellent, like such insight, and I think there was like a connection that we developed over the classes.
Wow, interesting. And you, in the description on, I think, LinkedIn, you talk about discussing the American bestseller Half the Sky.
Yes, that was the book that we would have readings from, and then like questions about.
Yeah, interesting. And really important to have those conversations in Japan. I think gender equality, gender empowerment is so important in Japan, and not talked about enough. So thank you for that.
Yes,
Um,
I went to the Women's March in my first year here, and I learned the phrase "danjo byodo," which I don't really speak very much Japanese, but I loved that. I learned that.
what was
uh,
it?
Danjo byodo. I hope
What
you're,
is that?
yeah.
Equality?
Yeah, gender equality, I
Mm-hmm.
believe. But there were a lot of women that did that march. It started at the UNU, but some of, like, some didn't want to be filmed. But the kind of there was a sense of community and a sense of awareness about the injustice or gender inequality here. So yeah, it was really nice to participate in that, and then like in a way, kind of activating that through the book club, and then also here at FEW.
Nice. And also August 2008, so this is going back to your time before coming to Japan, you
Yes.
were working with WHO.
Yes. Yeah. So right after law school, actually, I went to WHO. I wanted to. I've always loved having international experience, and I had a really interesting position, kind of looking at policy. Like it was as an intern, but I looked at policy and how it was applied in various African countries, and to see what was working and how the WHO might monitor that better. Yeah. So it was a short term thing, but a really good experience, and I loved WHO's in Geneva, and it's such a cosmopolitan city. It was really nice.
Wow,
Yeah.
sounds like a really great 3 month program. You learned so much, I'm sure. Let's talk about the article that you wrote about Argentina environmental.
Yes. So I guess some context for the environment, like I grew up basically spending all my time outdoors, like, and I just always found a sense of peace and respect for nature. And so when I was in law school, I had already spent one semester that I did abroad in Chile and Argentina, and I loved Argentina. It's, wide landscapes and a really beautiful place. So I found this internship through my environmental law professor. And this NGO that I worked at, it's called SEDA, or Centro de Derechos Humanos y Ambientales. So Center for Human Rights, Environment and Human Rights. And what they were trying to do was they tried to connect uh, global environmental policy with actionable uh, rights on the local level. So, for example, Argentina is a signatory to some, like the right to health, for example. But in the state that this litigation happened, like the state wasn't cleaning the water that was provided to certain neighborhoods, and like these neighborhoods couldn't access the private water resources. So they only had like what was the ponds and groundwater, but the groundwaters were being polluted by a sewage system, and the sewage system wasn't capturing that sewage, so people were getting sick. And so the legal theory that they used was that if you are at an international level signed to the right to health, you can't actually actualize that right to health if at the local level the water is really so bad that you're getting sick. So they forced the state of Cordoba to provide water to people, and then also to correct the sewage. So it was a way of connecting human rights with like health, which is it's a really novel theory that they used, and um, that organization won the Sierra Club Award. Mm, I forgot what year it was, but yeah, in the early
Wow,
2000s.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that experience is so relevant for what is happening in America, even with
Mm,
water rights like Flint, Michigan, local poor people basically
yeah.
not having access to clean drinking water. And then brings, to mind also MyMizu, the app that helps you find clean, free drinking water, not only in Japan, but now all over the world. So access to drinking water, it really is a human right. So
Yes.
what an interesting project that was.
Yeah. Yeah. I think access to water is essential, right? And recently, like I don't follow so much, like I wouldn't know the state of the law right now, but I did read recently like a Times article that like Lake Erie was granted, like the lake itself was granted rights. So I'm not quite sure how that's being applied, but there people are finding novel ways to uh, protect natural resources, and I think that that's long overdue.
Yeah, for sure. Now that we see climate destruction during the climate crisis, we really should be treating these, freshwater lakes or mountains or, all the things that we depend on for our quality of life. We should protect them. And maybe the only way to do that is to consider them having rights as people do, right?
Hmm.
That's interesting. Never thought about that
Yeah.
before. Also,
Yeah.
you were a volunteer. Of course, you come from a legal background.
Hmm.
Um, you have a law degree in the
Yes.
States.
Yes.
You were also a volunteer attorney. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, yeah. So for Georgia Legal Services, that's like essentially legal aid in other states. I was a volunteer attorney. I took cases like on an ongoing basis, and I worked on them. Most of them I worked on site. But yeah, I think that I grew up with this kind of idea that like if you have certain access or certain privilege, then you're it's your job to give back somehow. And so I felt that this was one way that I could.
I saw
Yeah.
for your birthday recently. Happy birthday, by the way.
Yes.
You were collecting money for Southern Poverty Law Center.
Yes.
Can you introduce that?
Yeah, yeah. So the Southern Poverty Law Center does a lot for kind of calling out groups that are bigoted, and in addition to doing advocacy like impact litigation, so taking one person, like one plaintiff's complaint, and then fighting it until you create a precedent that then other people can benefit from. They also do a lot of training, which is creating handbooks, manuals, and just yeah information to help guide groups. So I like their work. Um, I understand that there may have been like some scandals like in their like past, but I think that their kind of overall work is really good. So yeah, I you know during the whole Black Lives Matter kind of upsurge, really it's really been exciting and interesting to hear. And what I would love to do is also find a way to fund kind of how to say it, like mental health counseling, um, especially for Black people, because I think that that's it's something that's really expensive in America. The healthcare system doesn't really cover that. And so, like, I think that people that are constantly having to deal with a sense of injustice need uh, need a place to talk about these things. So, yeah,
Yeah, for
there's
sure. I think having access to counseling is definitely something that kids should be able to access in schools, but also adults as well, especially during this coronavirus time. There's so much unknown, there's so much stress. To
Mhm.
have access to routines or advice that can help you, coping mechanisms,
Yes. Yes.
ways to relax, that would really help. I did my undergrad in psychology, and
Oh,
I
okay.
actually thought I would go into counseling psychology, but then came to Japan on the
Mm.
JET program, which
Oh, it's
transitions to our next topic. Tell us about
okay.
your time in Japan as a JET.
Yeah. Um, to be fair, Frank, I didn't even think I would last. I wouldn't. I intended to come for 1 year, and maybe I think many jet stories start that way. But the school that I came to, it's called Tokyo Metropolitan Nishi High School, and it's an excellent school. Like the students are just incredibly well behaved. Kind of the stories that you might hear about people sleeping in class or acting up or saying rude things, like none of that like happened, and they're really ambitious students. So I've had the chance to work with kids that are going abroad for their education, and yeah, it's
How did you find it as a, I mean, I came straight out of university to the JET
uh-huh.
program, and it was a great experience in, it's not, I mean, it taught me about teaching because I had never
Mm.
had teacher training. So
Yeah.
you have some teacher training, you're kind of thrown in the classroom, but you're team teaching, so
Yes.
you're not there on your own.
Yes.
Um, how was that experience for you? Because you were a professional before
Yes.
you came. You didn't
Yes.
come straight out of university, right?
Yes. Yeah, no, you're right. And there's like two sides to that. Like, yeah, some of it was team teaching. But at my school, like I felt that they were soliciting my ideas and my, like, oh, how should we do this? But that took a while. And then I did teach like a few of my own classes. Like I taught debate and I taught like a writing workshop that I developed. But it is somewhat limiting if you're used to being in charge and you have an opinion on how things go. I mean, I learned a lot though from my coworkers, and so I'm not like a trained teacher, and even the jet training is really minimal, I think. So um,
I think it gives you a good insight into Japanese education, though.
absolutely, yes. And also perhaps some of the red flags because, I had the option to stay on longer, but I do find it limiting. And um, there's some structural issues in Japanese education. I think um, I, for one, believe in positive reinforcement. And sometimes what I saw was kind of almost like ridiculing somebody for making a mistake, or always trying to conform to the right answer. Like there's some right answer. And so, I think I enjoyed open-ended questions, or, in law school, we do like the Socratic method. So like I'd have students answer and then I would ask them why. And that's like, what?
Yeah.
But I think that that's so important to kind of get them to do that. So,
No,
mm,
that's good. And the JET program has been around for a long time.
yes,
And
yes,
it's not only about the teaching, it's about bringing people from all around the world who speak English to be part of their community and to kind of be ambassadors for where you come from and your style of education and the Japan education. I
yes,
think the whole idea of it is really great, and I
yes.
know that it's becoming privatized in a lot of places, that
Mm,
the program is shrinking, but
mm,
I'm a big advocate, and I always suggest it if somebody's thinking about coming out to Japan looking
yeah,
for a job.
yeah.
It's not a bad first job, if you want
No,
to be in Japan.
no. I think in that respect it's great because you get an introduction to also like the work life, like the meetings and like the hierarchy, and not that like, yeah, I don't love hierarchy, but I like the exposure, and I think I have a sense now of like, what it would be like to be in like a Japanese company. But actually, I want to go back to one point you made, which is I think the reason that the program exists isn't necessarily um, only English, right? It's this creating cross-cultural understanding and connection. And I think that more than ever, that's an important thing to have, right? Not just based on, okay, I grew up in America and you grew up in Japan, but like the life experiences and just the perspectives that you could share. Um, I think that equips people to be able to handle whatever else is coming in the future. So
Yeah, for sure.
um,
And
I think that part is
I, I think you're finishing your third year, right? So you
yes.
understand the program pretty well. I also did 3 years.
Uh-huh.
And I became like a mentor for the area to give advice to new jets
Yes, yes,
coming
yes,
in. I
yes.
can't remember what that's called,
The
but
local area coordinator,
right,
maybe.
okay. And then a lot of the questions and problems that I had from new jets, of course, they weren't really about Japan. They were about having a real job for the first time, like actually having to show up
Yes.
to work, every day, 9 to 5. So it was a good first job for many
Yes.
people, but it also made me realize a lot of the cultural problems people are having are just work culture in general,
Yes. Yes.
and that the local host school or business was actually probably nicer than many companies that they might work for in the States.
Yes, absolutely. I was thinking, I heard some of these as well, like, oh my God, they want me to teach 16 classes. I'm like, or you could work, more than 50 hours at a corporate job. So I think for many young jets, it's an eye opener. Even like learning to have a budget, so many people I found in Tokyo were getting an apartment that was almost half of their salary, or it's just unsustainable, I think. So
Yeah,
many people learned, I think, a whole lot of life skills in addition to connecting with students and teaching
definitely.
skills. Yeah.
Definitely. Plus, you get to be part of all the cultural activities and really
Mhm.
connect with the students
Yes.
and it's a great way to learn Japanese. I think those 3 years on the JET program is basically my Japanese even now. I haven't had that much time to study like I did
Yeah.
then.
Yes.
So you do have a lot of free time to prepare for classes, but also to study Japanese. So yeah, I recommend it. It's not a bad first job.
Yes. Yeah. So I mean, I uh, I I think we're gonna get to the JMEC, but I essentially did the JMEC program during my second year as a jet. So I realized that yeah, I have some free time in like the desk warming part of the job, and so I could do something a little bit more.
Yeah, make use of that 9 to 5 time at your desk. Let's talk about JMEC next because that was a
Yeah.
great experience for you.
Yeah, yeah. So as we kind of established, like JET is it's a great program, but I found like I had because I had like a professional experience, um, a little bit of an interest in business. Like I found out about this program and I realized, oh, I could do this at the same time as doing the JET. And so JMEC stands for Japan Market Expansion Competition. It's a business training program for like mid-level professionals, and it's composed of maybe about half Japanese people and half foreign nationals. I think if this year maybe more women than men participated, so it's about like 60 people, 60 to 80 people, depends, and it's a fantastic program where the program brings in entrepreneurs or business executives, and they talk to us about various principles in business. So we learned about like marketing strategy or how to write a business plan. Um, and so the first few months, 4 months, are like courses that you take. So you don't have any Saturday nights anymore or Saturday days. And then the second half is the business plan writing portion. So you're actually assigned a case and a client from a real business that purchased this plan from the JMAC, and we are assigned teams, and we work as a team on developing a business plan that looks at marketing and strategy, placement, yeah, all of what it would take to come into Japan and have a successful start. And it's the competition part is that the plan is judged against all the other participants, and like the top prize has always been the Finnair tickets. So this year that was also the case, but so everybody gets like the winning team gets a round trip ticket to anywhere that Finnair flies. Yeah.
Yeah, and not the best prize right now, but maybe, hopefully travel will resume someday. Now, you had a scholarship from FEW to join. Do you want to introduce that?
Yeah. So I actually reached out to, so I was a jet, right? Like when I applied, and so the jet salary is a little limited, and I asked the director, kind of what are some options, and I think also there's a Daijob. They also have some scholarships for the program, and I learned about few, and I met with um, one of the board members, and I told them about myself and why I wanted the program. And yeah, they gave me a full scholarship, which was really nice. I mean, I was going to do the program, but it's nice to have that support. And then like through that scholarship, I learned about VIEW. I met a number of other women that are in the space of entrepreneurship or professional women. So that was a great introduction. And then like about maybe about a year later is when I found out that View was looking for kind of more support, like board members, and through their membership. And so it was a great way for me to like decide, oh well, I can give back now because I got a little bit of hands-on work experience, and I liked kind of the project management role. So when I did the JMAC as a participant, I was the team leader for my group, and that was a really cool experience because I hadn't quite like hands-on led a group that way, and so then I wanted to kind of work on my own projects at Few. So it kind of segued nicely to sponsor me, and then I can come back and help on some projects here.
Yeah, wonderful. We, of course, had Kristen O'Connor in the series, and she's the president of FEW, and they're doing really good work around Japan, empowering women, having a lot of networking activities.
Yes.
Like, for example, you have a FEW virtual lunch going on these days.
Yes.
As program coordinator, are you in charge of the virtual lunch?
So I'm not in charge of the virtual lunch. Kyoko Nagano, she is in charge of that. So she's been a member for a very long time, also a board member, and she did the JMEC the same year I did.
Oh, interesting.
As a participant.
Yeah.
So I'm one of two program directors, and in April was my like first hands-on event, and April was right as Corona was kicking in. So actually, that was our first online event that few had ever done in like its 39, 40 years of being around. So it was an exciting time to get to be behind the scenes.
Nice.
So yeah, the program directors, we're in charge of the monthly meeting. So we source the speaker and kind of work with them to find out their messaging and then prepare that. So that's the part that I've been doing.
Who was the speaker for that?
Her name is Leslie. She was I think she still is the women's rugby coach. So she's a female coach. She's Canadian, but had a lot of experience in New Zealand. And she was a fantastic speaker because she could talk about leading a group of women in her own style. as a coach, she seems very hands-on and like very inspiring. And so her style is a little bit different than what the women here are used to. But I think she's found a way to bring a harmony to her style and what goes on here.
Yeah, excellent. And she's a women's rugby coach in Japan, is she?
Yeah, the national women's rugby
That's
coach
awesome. That's
for
awesome.
Japan. Yeah.
All right, let's shift gears a little bit. You are also on the writing team for Tokyo Chipo, is that right?
I well, I know not the writing team. I wrote a set of pieces for them just about my neighborhood Nishio-gikubo. Um, so I'm kind of a foodie, and probably my one of my biggest new hobbies in Japan is riding my bicycle around and finding cool restaurants. And so for Tokyo Chipo, I wrote a few blurbs on some of my favorite places in Nishio-gikubo.
Yeah, it looks great. I'm showing the picture of the article right now.
Ah,
What do you find appealing about Ogikubo? I've never been there.
so it's on the Chuo line, and it's a station right before Kichijoji, and it's wow, I could go on and on. Like, there's a whole blend of like, uh, Italian or bistro style restaurants, and then there's like a little alley that kind of reminds people of Golden Guy, small like shacks and bars that you have to like squeeze in. Um, there's that. There's like a number of Indian restaurants. There's some like an a store that sells like African fabrics, another place that sells like herbs and lentils that are like organic and fair trade. So it has just a really cool mix of it's a foodie town, but a little bit off the beaten track.
Wow, awesome. And
Yeah.
Tokyo Chipo, two staff writers were in the series, seeking sustainability number 15.
Oh, is
So,
that right? Is
yeah,
that like Greg and Chris?
that
You have
was Carrie
uh
and Marique.
oh, okay, okay, all right.
So we were
I see,
talking
see.
about how being frugal is
Uh,
often being sustainable at the same time. So
yes.
that was a great discussion. Yeah, you have to
Yeah,
check
yeah.
it out.
No, I will. I look it up. I mean, that's kind of. I think that it's one of my mantras to live because, like, you can. I don't buy a lot of stuff. I don't really like too much stuff. I like to buy things one time and like make them last for like a decade if I can. Like, I think my backpack is about 10 years old, maybe more than that.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
Buying, and we talked a lot about their vintage shop articles. So if you're buying something that's already been bought and used and
Mm,
extending the life of products, that's
yes.
being frugal, but
Yes.
it's also being more sustainable. So
Yes.
yeah, awesome. We had a lot of good ideas. And then through that article, I also learned about one of the writers, Selena, and
Uh-huh.
then she was on the series. So it's a
Oh.
great connection. Let's talk about your entrepreneurship, your original innovation for starting a company. And I
Mm.
believe you're wearing something you might want to show us.
Yes. Yeah, so ta-da, can you see it?
Yeah,
Okay.
beautiful.
So this is the shape is a sakura, but the whole pattern is inspired by uh, the Tokyo sewers manhole covers. Um, so this idea actually came about like in April, just as Corona was setting in, and I realized, I'm gonna have a lot of time on my hands because we were working from home, and um, I like to stay busy, and I was actually at the very beginning very bummed because I love the spring, I like hanami, and so I was like, I have to find some project that will, uh, keep me involved. So when I saw the manhole and I was like, oh, actually, there are flowers everywhere. The flowers aren't just in the park. Um, and so this like sakura kind of inspired me. And then I started to like notice that there are like really beautiful manhole covers in Japan. And as I started to like investigate and take pictures, I like realized that it's not just me that thinks that they're cool. There's a whole world of that. Some of the searches require you to know katakana or like to like type in, Japanese to find like the following, but there's a huge following of that here in Japan.
Yeah, it's great. I had a student from when I was teaching university who graduated, and then she was working with a local like destination marketing group. And
Yes.
so her job was basically to go around on Instagram and update all the manhole cover designs. So I know there are enthusiasts about manhole cover design all
Yes.
around Japan, and it's a great idea. So who's making your design? Tell us more about the process of
Ah,
making the design and where it's made and everything.
yeah. So, um, I'm not sure. Like, it's not just one place
Mm-hmm.
actually. So these shirts are print on demand. Um, and so I work with like a designer that like the kind of will take the image and adapt it in the way that I ask. So, for example, I would like to highlight this, I would take this out, change this. So, I work with a designer and they help me put it on like the correct format to put it on a t shirt. But then if you go to the website like TokyoGround.com, based on where you are, um, will determine actually where the shirt will get printed. So that is it's a print on demand. It all happens kind of behind the scenes.
But that seems like a more sustainable way to do it.
I think that like the print on demand is a more sustainable way to do it because it's not like I'm creating like 100 shirts and then like they may or may not get sold. They may or not become popular. So I think that it creates less waste that way. I think a lot of shopping is shifting online, right? And especially even more so since Corona happened.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and of course I'm interested to hear more about the recycled plastic t-shirt that you have.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. So actually, the one I'm wearing,
Mm-hmm.
it's four recycled plastic bottles. Like the plastic that's in it is equivalent to that, and then the rest of it is organic cotton. So these are the most expensive shirts on my site. Um, but at the same time, like they're also really like the texture is sturdy. So you could like have many washes and it won't like fade out because if you have some of the other shirts, like it'll start to wither away. So I really love this shirt. Right now, though, this shirt is available in black and white, and I think that that kind of represents the market for these shirts. Like if more and more people were buying these kind of shirts, I think that there would be an incentive to create more colors. And I'd like to see that happen because like it's the idea that you're actually it's like upcycling that plastic. I think it's a good thing to do, right? Like fashion as it is a really wasteful industry, fast fashion in particular. So um, as more and more people are willing to uh, spend a little bit more, but maybe buy a little bit less, I think that that shift will eventually trickle into like the options that there are.
Yeah, for sure. Consumers
Yeah.
have a lot of power. And if they make their voices heard, or even if they make more insightful choices or meaningful or thinking about the long term choices,
Yes.
that has an effect on company behavior. So, yeah,
Yes.
we have more power than we realize for sure. So, on your website, I love your website, by the way, it's so cute. And I can't believe you just started it in April. It's very professional. You did a great job. You've got very professional models and everything. Like, really well done for setting up your whole website and everything.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, there are like I think nowadays a lot of tools available for people that want to, put an idea out there and test it. So, yeah, thank you.
That's great. And then on your website, you also talk a little bit about the history of manholes. Can you give us some insight into Japanese
Yes.
manholes?
Yes, forgive me for if I pronounced the name wrong, but it's so the Japanese like sewer system was mm, outdated. And so after World War II, Japan wanted to upgrade its sewer systems, and they couldn't figure out how to get people to pay for that, or municipalities to pay for that. And so this construction minister, Yusutake Kameda, kind of suggested like, okay, let's make a design on the cover, and we'll charge a little bit more for that design, and that would pay for the upgrades that we want to do. And so my article here is titled "A Bureaucrat's Gift," because he worked at that level, but his idea actually helped inspire this whole unique form of art. And so now there's like 12,000 manhole designs, at least across Japan. Uh, and so that idea of spending just a tiny little bit more and having art instead of a very plain manhole caught on. And yeah, I think it's an example of how creative policy making can create meaningful impacts like later on down the road. I think nowadays like the manholes will reflect what's popular in a particular prefecture. Um, so let's see. Like I know in Niigata or like Sado, like there's like a yuri, like the lily, on their manhole cover because they have many lilies, and
Yeah,
then
and
there's
if you go to Miyajima, which is Hiroshima's famous tourist destination, you will
uh
see manhole covers with deer and the momiji, the Japanese maple leaf, which is
yes,
the symbol of the area. So I think manhole covers and local tourism destinations are definitely working together to
yes,
do like a destination branding using manhole covers.
mm,
And you kind of equated the having the t-shirt design with the Olympics, and you might be sad about missing Olympics. So don't feel sad, and here are some designs from manhole covers. I think I saw that on your website, and I thought that was a nice
ah,
parallel. So you've kind of equated it with tourism, Olympic tourism.
right. I mentioned that in the kind of about us page, right? Because I
Mm-hmm.
realized that um yeah, in like April or May, like I'm starting to realize that you can't go anywhere for a long time. And so there perhaps many people would have wanted to visit Japan, right? But aren't going to be able to. And so one way to mm, allay that disappointment is to kind of appreciate the art here. And so, you know, take home a shirt that like you would have walked by. Like that was my inspiration there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's connected to pop culture. I mean, how many times was I told before I came to Japan, Japanese people are shy and
Mm.
Japanese people are not creative. And that is
Mm.
so untrue.
Mm.
Japanese people are not shy. You get them up at karaoke, they will sing in front of anybody.
Yes.
Japanese people are creative,
Yes.
in creative design, in creative solutions to
Mm.
problems that we're having. So
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that was thanks to the JET program that it really opened my eyes to that.
Yes. I'm with you in that, like, that there's that perception. Um, but I do find that, like, all the students I had were, like, encouraged to develop one area at least of, like, expertise or, like, a hobby or an art outside of their schooling. Um, and that, like, through that, like, was one way that they would find to shine and really stand apart from others. And although that's like discouraged in other contexts, like there's a space for that. And yeah, I think it would be terribly dismissive to think that people in Japan aren't creative. Like, I
No,
mean,
for
that's
sure.
yeah.
Very, very creative. Um, maybe more modest, so maybe it doesn't
Yes.
stand out as much, right?
Absolutely. This is something that surprised me. When I came to Japan, like through the jet, right? Like they have a homestay that Tokyo Jets do. So I had a 10-day homestay, um, and the family that I stayed with, it's just a couple, older couple, and the lady, she's like she plays the piano, but like she's just like, oh, I just play it as a hobby. And like last year they invited me to, like, oh, she's playing at this recital, come and watch. And she was just like, oh, this is my hobby, it's not a big deal. And I show up and it's like this hall, and like there's all these people watching, and she's like, she plays so beautifully, and she like sings too, and I'm like, what is this? I had no idea. Um,
That's a lovely thing about Japanese culture. You or be living in Japan, you never know what kind of amazing expert is like
mm,
sitting right next to you, right?
yes, yes. No, that's a good lesson, especially as
Yeah.
as an American. Like we think, oh, if I can, I like to dance salsa. Oh, I got this. And like I show up to dance, and there's like people that are basically semi-pro, on the like typical dance floor, and it's like, wow. Check yourself.
Yeah. That's awesome. Anything else you want to mention about your business, your t-shirt business?
No, right now I have I think my most popular design is like um, the one that's Fuji, and it's like the red Fuji, so it's the one that you would see in the morning, like if you were looking
Mm-hmm.
onto it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but no, it's I think it's like a fun art and a good way to support, like, you know like having like local pride. Like, hey, I there's one on there that's like from Kichijoji, which is very close to me, and so I'll be adding like more designs as we go. But no, that's just a little like about the background, and I think
Yeah.
I've shared a lot.
Yeah. No, that's great. Recently, I also saw you're writing some lyrics. Looks like your
Ah,
quarantine jam. Can you
quarantine jam.
introduce that to us? I
Yes.
love that.
Oh my God, I'm. This is the first time I actually shared any sort of uh, creative writing, I suppose. Like I guess it's a poem. But one of my friends is a songwriter, and during this Corona, I was actually struggling. Like, so I wrote a poem about like um, the end of the season and whatnot, and like how we're gonna miss spring, and like kind of through that I started to share more of my creative writing. And so this poem that I wrote was like the following day was about um, taking back like life, and like this the last line of it is, my sanity I won't let crack. And so it's about, although we're in like the time of corona and it's changing many things for us, like i I do not like submit myself to that kind of dreariness that people sometimes will take on. Actually, that reminds me. I've been doing this course with Julia Cameron called the Artist's Way, and she's really well respected in like writers circles and among artists. And um, I also started that like right around April. Um, I had the book on my like reading list for maybe 2 years, but I had received it in January from a friend, and it's a 12-week course in discovering your own like creativity. So this T-shirt idea and like the business behind it, and also kind of sharing quarantine jam, they all came from this exercise, like the exercises in her book. And so she recommends like doing 3 pages of morning pages every day. So you write 3 pages of freehand, just no filter, and also like a series of activities, like go outside and pick 5 rocks. Um, all these different things that are meant to spark your creativity. So um, that's kind of how I came to Quarantine Jam and being able to like share about it, and also to continue doing like more creative writing.
That's great. I love the diversity of your background, what you've been doing, and
Uh,
what you plan to do, and how you're always trying new things. And I think
yes.
that should be really inspiring to so many of us that feel like we're stuck right now and we
Mm,
can't do anything. So
yes.
I love this diversity. I thank you for letting me show it that about your quarantine gem. I love that.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, one of the things I found, in I feel like in Tokyo, for example, like as a professional, like I've seen in my kind of in my community, like people that are, both like consultants, that are instructors, facilitators, and they just have a variety of things. And I I see myself in that, right? It's like I find a lot of things interesting, and yeah, I like to keep learning new things. So in a way, like this place and like my in my professional life here, I found, I can teach this course to C-level executives, or I can also like teach kind of law review prep, or writing to high school students. So I find that here, especially in Tokyo, people are much more accepting of that, which I appreciate, because um, I found that in the United States, I was getting a little bit pigeonholed, that this is your career and this is like the set path that you have. And that's one of the things I'm really grateful for about being here, is through like the JMEC and through FEW and even the Jet community, I found lots of places where you can really develop more expertise or develop a new skill set. And I'm grateful for that.
That's great. Well, let's talk about your future now for the last 8 minutes. If you go to
Yes,
sabrinahassanali.com, then
yes,
you've got a lot of services that you're offering. Do you want to
yes.
introduce that?
Sure, sure. Yeah. So I love to write as it is. And I write like, whether it's manuals, or like I like to write people's narratives, like personal narratives, like little bio pieces. And then I like to do workshops. So like I taught like the independent writing workshop, which wasn't just on writing, but also like on editing, and also like developing your idea to my high school students. And another workshop that I developed for a media company here, that was kind of working through what is the company culture, and what are some activities that you can do to test those and apply those as a group. So yeah, I offer like a variety of like business solutions, and it's mindful business solutions, because I think it's conscientious. Um, I'm I work with business people that have a kind of a conscientious spirit, almost like I like kind of like B Corp. And so the B Corp companies are geared at almost a level of social entrepreneurship, not just money for the sake of money, but like as a business participating in a bigger world, in a world that you're also a responsible citizen in. So I do other services like consulting. I think these would fall into basically a form of consulting.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and collaborating as well. You
yes.
recently had a collaboration with another organization, Just People.
Yes, yes. So interestingly, Just Peoples is one of the founders is a former Jet, and I met her actually at the Jet after career seminar. She's also a FEW member, and that organization does really fantastic work. And especially after Corona happened, what they do is they source funding to projects in I think they have Tan maybe Kenya or Tanzania, Bangladesh, Vietnam, a number of places where people don't have the financial resources that we do, and they essentially empower project leaders on the ground there. And so I worked with Christy to kind of help strategize how they might bring in more supporters for their projects. What's unique about the way that they've run is that they have very, very little overhead. The ladies that are running it have done it for at least 5 years, and they take like a salary for like a day each, and that's it. So it's not like there's the ad, even the administration isn't actually even covered by the supporters. They have a different group of people that actually pay their admin fees, and so they're really close to the leaders that are there, and they empower them. They don't tell the leaders like, oh, you should develop this project or this project. The leaders that they work with are kind of vetted already, and they support them with what it is that they want. So it's a really unique way of having a nonprofit organization and like empowering people. So it's like poverty alleviation is their ultimate goal.
Yeah, very sounds similar in many ways to Refugees International Japan. We had a nice talk in the series with the director from that organization too. Yeah, I'll reach out to them. Sounds like a wonderful organization.
Absolutely, please. Yeah, Christy's lovely to talk to. She's really inspiring.
Great. We had a wonderful comment from Kirsten O'Connor. You have such a great range of skills, experience, and passions to share, Sabrina. Love your quarantine jam. Go you.
uh, Thank you, Kirsten. Kirsten's been really wonderful to work with. So I'm really happy to have her at the helm of FEW, because FEW is, especially with Corona and all going online, like it's a challenging time, and you need to have somebody who has, who can lead but can also listen. And Kirsten, I think, is really good at that.
Yeah, wonderful. We had a great discussion about education as well as FEW with Kirsten. That was a great talk. One thing we haven't touched on yet, which for the last few minutes, is maybe talk about on your website you say, I know small business. So
Yes.
you have a background understanding of small businesses.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So my everybody in my family is basically an entrepreneur. My mother is a physician, but she has a portfolio of real estate as well as like her own practice, medical practice. My father ran his own business. My aunts and uncles all had their own business. So growing up, I constantly heard like the challenges that they faced as like entrepreneurs, and many of them solopreneurs. Um, and so like, yeah, I provided like legal services to a number of my families in this context, for their small businesses. And yeah, it's in that way, like having the inside perspective on business is, um, yeah, I think it informs some of the, caution that you have to have, because I've seen things go south, and also like the right balance of, things could go south or like they could go really well. So, learning how to weigh that from the backside, is important, and I think helps, um, you know, helps ground some of my advice if I give advice on that.
Yeah, I think that's really important to have a more realistic view of what being an entrepreneur is like. It's not as easy as you think, but it's maybe not as hard as you think as well, right?
Yes, I think, it's not as easy as you think.
Yeah.
Uh, I think it's hard, but maybe it's some people, like when they look into like entrepreneurship, they say like, oh, it's this or nothing. And I think that a lot of times like you can have, a backup, which is like kind of like this idea of a side hustle or a side project, um, is a form of developing entrepreneurship. And I think, that provides a place where people can have, a fallback to a steady income, but also develop certain skills. So that's something, I've tried to do, in my life, like just always have had, some sort of stable income as well as a project that I'm working on.
Yeah. One thing you mentioned for the future, which I want to mention, I am also a fellow lover of fudoshiki. So I was really happy to see your fudoshiki in use on your
Ah,
Facebook page.
yes.
So as far as sustainable living, do you use your fudoshiki?
I used it last weekend, actually.
Awesome. It's so
Yes,
useful, and I suggest it to shops all the time.
yes,
That if you want to improve the branding of your business
yeah,
and you offer fudoshiki for an extra price,
yeah,
and you give the service of wrapping,
yes,
you are upping your brand. And it's from Japan. Let's bring it
yes.
back.
Yes. Well, I think Japan has really great, like, kind of built into the mentality here, this sense of not wasting, right? The mottainai, and people actually having their own bags with them, which is even before like you're starting to pay for your plastic bags, it's still more prevalent here than it was in the United States. Or like separating and sorting trash. So there's just many ways I think that insight is already in the culture here.
It's definitely area by area. I see
Uh,
more strict rules about trash and recycling in certain areas and
uh,
not so much in others. But that's the same in the States too, right? I
oh
was
my
in San
God.
Francisco.
Yes.
I went to Recology. That's in one of my videos on my channel, and they're at 80% recycling reuse. That's unbelievable.
Wow.
That's
Yeah,
like
that's
in Japan, we have Kamikatsu also at 80%, but
mm,
other cities, not so much, right?
mhm.
We have just a couple minutes. I wanted to mention you also interested in a passive house.
Yes. So this is my long-term life dream is to have a zero energy home. And so like at this stage, I'm in my 30s, so I'm not quite ready to lay down the foundation for my house. But essentially, I'm kind of considering like the ideas that are important to me. So access to water is an important one, but uh, basically, I think it's possible to have a home that doesn't take more energy than it creates. So using solar panels and also recycling wastewater are two of the big things, and having proper insulation so that you don't actually need to have a lot of energy to heat or cool down. And yeah, like I think
Absolutely.
there's so,
Yeah.
so much out there on that.
And
But yes,
we, in the series in episode 10, we talked to
yes,
Kevin Meyerson, and
okay,
he is one of the owners of Passive House in Japan.
yes,
And so he told us how it is different in terms of insulation,
yes,
keeping a constant temperature all around the
yes,
year. So it's definitely something everybody should strive for when you're thinking of home ownership in the future. That's
yes,
wonderful.
yes, yes. I think. Uh, I love the idea, and I think it's actually really doable. So like I think um, yeah, it's not an unreasonable goal and a really exciting one.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you so much for talking in the series today. And
Yes,
I think, like Kirsten said, you've got such a diverse background and you're so creative and you've got so much positive energy. So I really appreciate everything you're doing in Japan and keep up the good work, girl.
you're very kind, Joy. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, fantastic. And thank you, everybody, for watching today. And tomorrow we are talking to Mike Barr at 5 p.m. So please join us then. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good day. Take care.